So, why do we approach mental health incrementally? Find out on this episode of Incremental Health Tips. Welcome to Incremental Health Tips. My name is Jared, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Liz. Today, we're going to be discussing why it's important to approach mental health from an incremental standpoint, in our opinion. And as our name suggests, we're a big proponent of this, so spoiler alert, I guess, everyone. But Liz, going back to your training as a therapist and the time we spent developing this podcast and this resource, what is your take on why it is important to approach mental health incrementally as opposed to all at once?
I think sometimes people don't think about the benefits of making small, gradual change. They just tend to think about the change they want and everything that's needed to accomplish that. And if you make a whole list of all the changes you need to make in order to reach your goals, usually that's going to be quite a long list that could get quite overwhelming. And so doing change incrementally means that you're taking it in bite-sized steps. What is attainable for today?
Well, that's really important. Everybody is different and everybody is in a different place. And so depending on where you are and the context of your situation and also the change you want to make, you may have a longer or a shorter journey towards your goals depending on what they are. I remember when I was in high school training for long distance running, we wouldn't actually run the distance that we were training for the event. If we were training for a 5K, we wouldn't necessarily run a 5K to begin. We would actually start with much smaller distances and then from there gradually build our way to the endurance. And so I think that there were a lot of physiological reasons why we took that approach, but I do think it also helped us mentally prepare, because if we had tried the first day to run the whole 5 kilometers, we might have failed, and that might have just been demoralizing.
Yeah, so it's keeping that approach in mind that you don't have to do everything all at once. Most of the time, it's perfectly fine to just make gradual changes and just take a little piece today. What can you do today? And then take that step. It's much more motivating when you can accomplish a small piece instead of failing at trying to accomplish a large piece that you're really just not ready for.
Well, I do think knowing what we're ready for is a really tricky part of it, because especially when it comes to changes in mental health, if your problem is depression, let's say, if you knew how to maybe overcome your circumstances and improve your depression, you would have already done that. But if you make the goal of, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to feel better, that may or may not happen, or that may or may not be true. But what ultimately is going to make the difference is whether or not your expectations are realistic or not. And so if your expectations are not realistic, then you might be sabotaging yourself or getting yourself into a cycle of self-fulfilling prophecy if you don't manage your expectations and test your expectations and maybe try smaller things first, and from there get an actual sense of where you're at.
Yeah, and if anyone is having trouble with, figuring out a good goal, or they find that anytime they set a goal, they fail to reach it, I'd recommend that they listen to our YouTube playlist on goals, because we've got a lot of content on there already that talks about how to make a good goal.
Well, and also knowing it's not just having a good goal. A good goal is eating tomorrow, but that's not a very helpful goal. So it's it's also making sure that your goal is toward the ultimate direction you want to go. And so we are, and just to shift focus a little bit here, we actually um, we believe that mental health should be proactive. And so when you're setting goals for your mental health, you don't necessarily have to have a specific problem. Like, you don't need clinical depression in order to set goals on mental health. You can actually be in a good place and still take care of your mental health. Like, think of it like your physical health. If you're physically healthy, you're still having a good diet, you're still exercising. These are things that you already do, but they're things that you continue to do. You don't only diet when you need to lose weight. You have a healthy diet to maintain good physical health. And so in the same way, having goals around your mental health and planning for positive change and progress can really be beneficial towards your mental health.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're thinking about trying to make positive changes in a sustainable way, you might set a goal of each day I'm going to do one thing just to take care of myself, to nurture myself, give myself a little self-care. You know, whatever that thing might be, maybe it's going on a walk or taking a bubble bath or whatever it might be. It can change from day to day. But if you set that goal to include in within your day at least one self-care thing that you do, then that is something that helps to keep you energized and keep you mentally healthy.
Well, self-care is important, and self-care is a goal we should all make every day. I've heard the advice that you should actually schedule it. You should actually put self-care in your calendar, because so often it's easy to to say yes to things, and to push off the time we scheduled for ourselves, or to meet our goals. If self-care is one of your goals, just to make it important and book it on your calendar. It can really help in terms of actually following through with your goal. So, Liz, obviously you mentioned our playlists. Incremental change and improving your mental health is something that anybody can do, just by their own means, through reading online resources, by listening to podcasts, by seeking resources themselves. But at what point do you think somebody should seek help from a therapist? Like, where is that line in your view?
I think it depends on a lot of factors. I think a very clear sign would be if you find that you're no longer able to function, then you definitely need to have some support. Um, if you notice that mentally you're on a decline, then it's far better to get help sooner rather than later. But if you feel like you're doing okay, then maybe that's a good time to just read some articles on managing stress or something like that, that is going to help keep you mentally strong without needing to go and seek a therapist for some one-on-one help.
That's a good point. And you don't always have to seek a therapist just when you're having problems. Sometimes it can be good to check in once a year. I mean, you have a yearly physical with your doctor. It may not necessarily be a bad idea to check in with your mental health and just talk about how, well, I mean, especially more recently, we've had some pretty tough times. So even just taking inventory of where you're at now and where you'd like to be, and planning for your goals can be important. But ultimately, We believe that small steps do lead to big changes as you look to improve your mental health, which is why we started this podcast. So I think that's where we're going to wrap up for the day. But if you enjoy our content, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. With this episode, we really just wanted to, we've been doing this for a little while, and we just really wanted to touch base on the foundational concept of why we started this and make sure that every now and then we touch on that. But thank you very much, everyone, for your support and for your comments and subscriptions. They do mean a lot to us, and they do help us get discovered and spread the word on how to improve your mental health. Until next time, remember that small steps can lead to big changes. We'll see you next time.